And please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. It started as one of those late night chats that sneak up on you when you're bored and just scrolling without any real reason. I was sitting in the dark, laptop balanced on my knee, half watching some random show in the background. My wife had gone to bed hours ago, and the house was so quiet it made every small sound feel too loud. That's when I got a message from someone named Naima. Her profile picture looked soft and lonely, one of those women who looked like she carried sadness around like a shadow. Her bio said something about losing her husband young and just wanting someone to talk to. I didn't think much of it at first. I wasn't looking for anything. It felt innocent. I told myself that. It always starts with those little excuses, right? She just needed someone to talk to. She lives alone, she misses companionship, and maybe I can help her feel a bit less empty. The first few nights were small talk. Favorite movies, bad weather, work stress. Then the chats got deeper. She started talking about how she felt forgotten, how silence filled her house, how she still slept on one side of the bed out of habit. I typed back longer messages than I should have, telling her about how sometimes I felt invisible too, even in a full house. We started to talk every night. She'd messaged me before I even sat down at the laptop. It felt strange, but also kind of nice, like someone was waiting for me. After a few weeks, I found myself thinking about her during the day. I checked my phone between meetings, waiting for her name to pop up. I'd delete our chats just in case. That's when it started feeling wrong, but I couldn't stop. She never crossed the line, not really. But the way she wrote, the way she listened, it pulled me in. She once told me she wished she could hear my voice. I almost sent her a voice note. That was the first real moment I stopped myself and thought, what am I doing? I'm a married man, chatting with some widow I've never met, acting like I'm doing something kind when deep down it's just feeding my ego. Then one night, she sent me a message that hit me weird. She said, "Do you ever wonder how far someone would go just to feel wanted?" I didn't know what she meant. I just replied, "I guess it depends who's asking." She didn't answer right away. She stayed offline for hours. I waited, telling myself I didn't care, but I kept refreshing the chat. When she finally came back, she sent a single message. "You went far enough, Dad." I thought it was a joke. I read it 3 times before my stomach dropped. The next message came instantly after. "It's me. I made the account." I didn't even know what to do. My chest felt tight, like the air had turned heavy. I typed and deleted 100 different things. My head was spinning. My teenage son, my own son, had been behind that account the whole time. The same son who barely spoke to me at dinner, who I thought spent his nights gaming or scrolling on his phone. He told me he wanted to prove a point. He said he wanted to see how far I'd go behind Mom's back. He said he didn't expect me to flirt, didn't expect me to get attached. But I had. I had fallen for a lie that he built, piece by piece, pretending to be someone who needed me. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell at him for going through that much trouble, for invading my privacy like that. But all I could think about was the fact that I actually betrayed something real. Even if nothing physical happened, even if it was just messages, I'd gone too far. He sent screenshots. Every word, every little message I thought was gone. He told me he'd been keeping them, just in case. I felt sick. I couldn't even look at him for days. My wife noticed the tension, but I couldn't tell her. How could I say, "Hey, our son catfished me and exposed me for being a coward online"? There's no way to explain that without sounding pathetic. The worst part was how well he played the part. Every message that made me feel needed, every little story about being lonely, it all came from him. I didn't know whether to be horrified or impressed. He had studied how I responded, used words that would pull me in. He knew exactly what to say because he knew me better than anyone. That hit harder than anything else. After a while, the silence between us got unbearable. He stopped talking altogether. I finally tried to break it. I went into his room one night and told him he'd gone too far. He just looked at me like he'd already said everything he needed to. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just said, "Now you know how Mom would felt if it was real." That stuck with me. It wasn't just a game to him. It was a test. A brutal personal test that I failed without even realizing it. Since then, things at home change. My wife doesn't know the full story, but she knows something's off. My son keeps his distance. I've tried to talk to him a few times, but he just gives me short answers. Maybe one day he'll forgive me, but I doubt it'll ever go back to normal. I stopped chatting with anyone online, deleted every app, turned off notifications. Now, when I sit alone at night, I don't reach for my phone. I just sit there in the quiet, the same way Neymar, my fake widow, said she did. Except now I get what that silence really feels like. It's not peaceful. It's heavy. It's a reminder of what I almost lost for nothing. And every time I see my son walk past me without looking up, I know I earned that silence. You ever meet someone online who just hits you right in that part of your chest that still wants to believe people are good? That's how it started with Taryn. It wasn't even a dating thing, nothing like that. It was on this veterans forum my cousin invited me to. I'm not even a vet, but I've been posting small stuff about helping out in the community, and somehow this guy Taryn started replying to my posts like we've known each other for years. His first message wasn't anything fancy. He said something like, "Appreciate what you do, man. Not many civilians understand." And I remember thinking, that sounds genuine. His profile picture was of this guy sitting by a campfire, wearing a military jacket, staring off into the distance like someone who's seen too much. The bio said, Iraq 2009 to 2013, trying to find peace. That line stuck with me. Trying to find peace. It sounded like something real people say, not those fake deep quotes people post. He talked a lot about noise. He said noise made him anxious. Kids yelling, fireworks, car backfires. Said sometimes he'd just get in his truck and drive until it was quiet again. The way he described it made me feel like I was right there in that silence with him. And maybe that's why I started messaging him more often, checking in and asking how he was doing. I told myself I was just being a decent person. We messaged for months. He'd tell me small things, like how he hadn't slept well, how the church nearby helped him out sometimes, how he was trying to get back on his feet. I never questioned any of it. I believed him completely. I even started telling people at work about this veteran friend I was helping out. I made it sound like I was doing something noble, when really I think I just liked feeling needed. Then one night, he messaged me saying his truck broke down on the way to therapy. He said he didn't want to ask, but the tall guy wanted $180 and he was short. I didn't think twice. I sent it. He thanked me over and over, told me he'd pay me back as soon as his disability check came in. Of course, I told him not to worry about it. A week later, he said his therapy sessions were helping, and I felt proud, like I'd actually made a difference. Then he mentioned how hard it was to afford groceries. I sent another $50. It wasn't a lot, but enough to feel like I was helping. We talked about everything. He told me about a guy from his unit who didn't make it home, about how he couldn't stand hospitals anymore. He said his faith helped him get through the nights. He mentioned a pastor named Brother Ken who visited him sometimes. I told him I went to a church too, and that's when it got weird. He asked which church. I told him the name, and he said that was crazy because that's where Brother Ken was from. I didn't believe him at first if he sent me a picture of the pastor standing in front of the same church sign I drove past every Sunday. That was the moment I should have stepped back, but I didn't. I thought it was some kind of miracle. Like maybe it meant something that I'd met Taryn out of all people, and we just happened to have that connection. The next few weeks he got quieter. I'd message him and he'd take longer to respond. When he did, his messages felt shorter and less personal. I figured he was just going through something. Then one Sunday after service, I ran into the pastor himself. I mentioned Taryn. The pastor looked confused and said he didn't know any veteran by that name. I showed him the picture Taryn sent me, and that's when the color drained from his face. He said, "That's from our mission trip. We posted that online last year." That's when it hit me like a truck. I'd been scammed. The pastor asked for more details, and I showed him a few messages. He frowned and said he thought he knew who might be behind it. His son. He said his son had gotten into some trouble before. Gambling, lying, stealing. I didn't even know what to say. It felt like someone had reached inside me and flipped something over. I went home that day and scrolled through every message. Every single one. It all read different after that. Every "thanks, man, and you're saving my life" felt like a slap. I'd sent him a total of $310, and the money wasn't even the part that hurt. It was the fact that I had opened up to someone who wasn't even real. The next day, I got one last message from Taryn. It said, "Sorry you had to find out like that. He told me to." That made no sense. I didn't reply. But he kept sending messages for a while, trying to explain. saying his dad was a hypocrite, saying he just needed money to get out of town. I blocked him. A few days later, I saw the pastor again. He pulled me aside and apologized. Said his son had confessed. Said he'd been using church photos and pretending to be different people to get donations. The pastor looked like a man crushed under the weight of his own bloodline. He offered to pay me back, but I couldn't take it. It wasn't about the money anymore. For weeks after that, I kept thinking about the way Taryn wrote about noise, about how it made him drive until things got quiet. I realized that part, the pain, might have been real for him. Just not in the way he said. Maybe he really was lost, just not the kind of lost he claimed to be. Sometimes I still open the forum where it all started. His profile is gone. Deleted. No trace of anything. Just a blank space where all those messages used to be. It's weird how fast someone can disappear like that. One day, you're the person you think you're helping save. The next, they're just gone, like they were never real to begin with. I stopped trying to play hero after that. I don't donate online anymore. If someone says they need help, I tell them to come by the church and talk in person. I guess part of me still wants to believe people can change, even if Taryn never did. But every time I see the pastor preaching about forgiveness, I wonder if he's talking to us or to himself. I met Emily during one of those stretches where everything in my life just felt stuck. Same job, same desk, same coffee every morning that tasted like burnt paper. I was halfway through a boring Tuesday when her message popped up on this random app I barely used anymore. Her profile picture wasn't anything special, just her sitting in a park, hair pulled back, sunglasses on. She said she was a single mom who liked photography and dogs, and that she only joined to talk to normal people. I laughed at that. Normal is one of those words nobody's ever really sure about. We started messaging that night. She had this way of talking that felt easy. She didn't overshare, didn't talk like she was fishing for attention. Just simple, human stuff. She told me about her daughter, how she was 8 and obsessed with baking shows, and how she'd recently moved to a smaller town because she wanted a quieter life. I didn't ask for too many details. It didn't matter. I just liked the way it felt natural. At first, I didn't think much of it. We'd chat while I was watching TV or waiting for files to load at work. But she always replied fast, like she was right there waiting on the other end. And when my days felt gray, she had this way of making them a little less dull. She'd ask what I was having for dinner or if I'd eaten yet, small stuff that no one else in my life really asked anymore. My wife and I barely talked by that point unless it was about bills or our schedules. After a few weeks, I started noticing that I was checking my phone too much, like embarrassingly too much. I'd wake up early just to see if she'd message. She said she couldn't sleep much either. Said her daughter had nightmares sometimes. We shared a lot of late night thoughts that had no business being shared between two people who weren't supposed to mean anything to each other. I told myself it was harmless, just talking, just words on a screen. But one night, she told me she'd sometimes felt invisible, like she was in a room full of people and nobody noticed her. I told her I knew what that felt like. That was the first time I realized we'd gone too far. There wasn't any plan to meet. It wasn't like that. But I started daydreaming about what she looked like when she smiled, what her voice sounded like when she laughed. Stupid small things. She told me she worked part-time in a school office, that she loved her coworkers but didn't really have friends outside of work. She'd say stuff like, "You remind me that not everyone out there is selfish." I ate it up like an idiot. Things carried on like that for months. We'd joke about running away to somewhere quiet. I'd say dumb things like, "You hate me in person, I snore." And she'd say, "My daughter would just laugh at you." It was easy, too easy. Then one day, something shifted. I was at work, eating lunch in my car, scrolling through my messages, and she sent a photo. It wasn't anything weird, just her and her daughter at a park. But when I looked at the kid, something about her face looked familiar. It bugged me all day. Later that night, I read through the messages again, and it hit me. The little girl looked like my coworker's kid. Same hair, same missing front tooth, same yellow jacket I'd seen in a picture on his desk once. I stared at that photo for a long time, heart pounding like crazy. I didn't want to believe it, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I went to her profile again, clicked on her old pictures, and one of them had a reflection in a window, a man's arm with the same tattoo my coworker had. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I walked into work and looked at my coworker differently. He was sitting there, laughing like nothing had happened. I couldn't tell if he knew. Maybe he didn't. Maybe she was doing it behind his back. But why me? Out of all people, why me? A few days later, I messaged Emily and said I needed to know the truth. She didn't reply for a while, and when she did, it was one short message. Please don't tell him. That was it. I knew then. It was her, my coworker's wife. She'd been using that app, that name, that whole story to catch me sliving. It made no sense at first. I hadn't even done anything to her. I'd never even been to their house. But later, I figured it out. She must have known her husband and I talked during breaks, that we shared stories about our lives. Maybe she thought I'd said something, or maybe she just wanted to test me. Either way, I was a pawn in whatever game she was playing. I stopped messaging her after that. Deleted everything. She never tried to contact me again, but every time I saw my coworker at the office, I couldn't stop wondering if he knew. The guilt stuck to me like something I couldn't wash off. One Friday, he mentioned that his wife thought I seemed like a nice guy. I laughed, but my stomach turned. I couldn't tell if she told him what she'd done or if that was her way of twisting the knife. Things got weird after that. I stopped hanging around the break room when he was there. I kept my head down, did my work, and went home. My wife noticed I'd been quiet, asked if everything was fine. I just said I was tired, which wasn't a lie. I was tired, just not in the way she thought. Months later, my coworker got a new job in another state. The day he left, he gave me a firm handshake and said, "Stay out of trouble, man." He said it jokingly, but I swear there was something in his eyes, like he knew more than he was letting on. After that, I deleted every app that wasn't essential. No more just talking. No more late night scrolling. I keep my phone face down now, like it's better that way. Sometimes I wonder if Emily even felt bad about what she did. Maybe she thought she was being clever, catching someone else's husband while pretending to be lonely. Or maybe she just wanted to prove something about her own marriage. Either way, she won. Because even though nothing physical happened, it still messed with my head. Now, when I look at people, I don't see friendly faces anymore. I see layers, hidden reasons, games waiting to happen. And the worst part, if she texted me right now, part of me knows I'd still want to read what she had to say. The first time I ever heard from Liam, I was half asleep, scrolling through my messages at 2 in the morning, trying to ignore the sound of my upstairs neighbor's dog losing its mind again. His message wasn't like the usual spam or weird stuff you get at that hour. It said, "Hey, I saw your profile. You've got a really natural look. Have you ever done modeling?" I laughed out loud. Modeling. I was 38, tired, and built more like a guy who spent too much time sitting in traffic than anyone who belonged in front of a camera. But something about the message made me pause. His profile picture looked legit, professional headshot, camera gear in the background, and a bio that said he was a freelance photographer working on a project about ordinary beauty. I ignored him that night, but the next day, curiosity got me. I clicked on his page again, and everything looked clean. No weird posts, no fake links. Just albums of random people posing in parks, cafes, alleyways, real people, not models. That's what pulled me in. They looked comfortable, like they'd been captured in their own world. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could be real. He messaged again a few days later, saying he was working on a little project and wanted people with authentic expressions. I don't even know what that meant, but it sounded flattering. He said he'd pay me for my time, nothing crazy, just $100 for a few photos in a coffee shop setting. I told him I'd think about it, pretending to be cautious, even though part of me was already weirdly excited. The idea of being seen like that, being photographed, it felt different. My life had been dull for a long time. Work, home, repeat. My wife and I had split a while ago, and I'd been stuck in this gray routine where nothing ever really changed. So when Liam said I had a story in my eyes, I guess I wanted to believe him. He asked if I was comfortable being filmed too, said he sometimes recorded behind-the-scenes footage for his portfolio. I said sure, as long as it wasn't anything weird. He promised it wasn't. He sounded genuine, polite even. Not like one of those fake model scouts you hear about. We planned to meet at this small coffee shop downtown. The morning of, I almost bailed. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the door, wondering what kind of idiot agrees to something like this. But I walked in anyway. The place smelled like espresso and rain. I looked around but didn't see anyone matching his profile picture. I texted him saying I was there, and he replied, "Sit by the window. I'll be there soon." So I did. I ordered a coffee and waited. 20 minutes passed, then 40. I started feeling stupid. No one came. I texted again. No answer. After an hour, I left. I figured I'd been stood up or scammed, but he hadn't asked for money or anything, so I just shrugged it off as a weird story to tell later. But then 2 days later, my friend sent me a video. It was on some social page for local social experiments. The title said, "Would ordinary people fall for fake modeling offers?" I clicked it, and there I was sitting by the coffee shop window, staring at my phone like a lost puppy. They'd blurred my face slightly, but anyone who knew me could tell it was me. Liam wasn't a photographer. He was a college student running a social experiment about how validation can manipulate strangers. The entire thing was recorded without me knowing. There were clips of him talking to the camera, explaining how people crave being seen, how a simple compliment can make them do things they wouldn't normally do. Then he showed me sitting there, checking my messages, looking nervous. He even played my text over the video. "Hey, I'm here by the window." The comments under the video were brutal. People were calling me desperate, gullible, sad. Some were laughing about how I must have really thought I was model material. My stomach dropped reading it. I didn't even finish watching. For days, I couldn't focus on anything. I called the coffee shop, asked if they knew about the filming, and they said no. I even messaged the account that posted the video, asking them to take it down. They never replied. The worst part, the video went viral locally. I'd be at the grocery store and catch people staring a little too long. A couple coworkers even joked about it in the break room, not realizing it was me. I laughed along, pretending I hadn't seen it, pretending it wasn't me. Weeks later, I finally found out who Liam really was. A friend of my younger cousin recognized him from school. He was in a media class doing projects on digital trust and deception. My cousin even said he bragged about how real his subjects' reactions were. I wanted to confront him, but what was the point? He'd already gotten what he wanted. I was just another data point for him, another example of someone who wanted to feel seen so badly they ignored red flags. After that, I stopped posting pictures of myself anywhere. Deleted all my old accounts, changed my phone number, even quit a few apps completely. I didn't want anyone seeing me again like that, through some fake lens, turned into a joke. Funny thing is, the video eventually disappeared. I think someone must have complained, or maybe it broke some privacy rule. But by then, the damage was done. People read it, commented on it, shared it. You can't take that back. I saw him once in person months later. He was walking out of a store near campus, carrying a camera bag. I froze. He didn't even notice me. Just walked by like I was invisible. And maybe that's what stung the most, that he didn't care. To him, it was all just content. To me, it was humiliation that lived under my skin. Since then, whenever someone messages me online, anyone, I hesitate. Doesn't matter what it's about. My brain goes straight to the worst possibility. I've learned how easily people can twist something simple into a game, and how quick strangers are to turn your mistake into entertainment. If there's one thing I remember most about that day, it's the sound of the rain outside the window. It was steady, quiet, and I remember thinking how peaceful it felt right before everything fell apart. Now, every time it rains, I catch myself looking out windows again. Not waiting for anyone, just remembering how it felt to believe someone actually saw me. I don't even remember the first message Sophie sent me. I just remember her name showing up when I was sitting in the parking lot after work, waiting for traffic to die down. It was one of those days that just wouldn't end. My head was pounding, my back hurt, and I was scrolling through notifications like a zombie. Her message was short. "Hey, I like the stuff you post. You seem real." That's all it said. I clicked on her profile out of curiosity. She didn't have many photos, just a few selfies, one of her in a hospital bed, and another of a sunset with the caption, "Grateful for another day." Her bio said, "Living with stage 4, but still living." That caught me off guard. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. People post that kind of thing sometimes for attention, but something about the way she wrote it didn't feel fake. It wasn't dramatic, just matter of fact, like someone who'd accepted what they couldn't change. I messaged her back later that night. We talked about random things, music, food, life. She said she liked to live through other people now, which sounded strange at first, but I didn't question it. She said she loved hearing about normal things, like grocery shopping or driving or doing laundry. I guess when you're stuck in a hospital room, even boring stuff starts to sound interesting. After that, she messaged me almost every day. She told me about her treatments, the nurses she liked, the ones she didn't. She said she hated how people treated her like she was already gone. She said that talking to me made her feel normal again. I didn't know why she picked me. I wasn't special. But after a while, it became part of my day, hearing from her. I'd check my phone on breaks, at dinner, even before bed. She'd ask what I was doing, and I'd tell her everything, like I was sending updates to someone who actually cared. After a few weeks, she sent me a photo of a letter. It was written in shaky handwriting, addressed to her parents, thanking them for letting her go. I didn't know how to react. I sat there staring at my screen, heart racing, wondering if she was about to do something. I messaged her right away, asking if she was okay. She replied, "I'm fine. I just want to make peace with things." That night, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone every hour, half expecting some terrible update. The next morning, she sent me a picture of her coffee and said, "Still here." I laughed out loud, half in relief. That became our thing. Whenever one of us had a rough day, we text, "Still here." She told me about her bucket list. Nothing big, no skydiving or world travel. Just small things like walking barefoot in grass, eating street food, painting something ugly on purpose. She said if I ever wanted to do something for her, I could do one of those things and tell her about it. So I did. I sent her pictures of me walking through a field behind my house, eating tacos from a food truck, even doodling some awful art on a napkin. She loved it, said it made her feel alive again. It was around the second month when she said she wanted to meet. I didn't know what to think. I didn't even know what she looked like outside of those pictures. I asked if she was sure, and she said she wanted to see the world one last time through someone else's eyes. We planned to meet in this park she liked. She said it was near her clinic, quiet, with trees that looked like they belonged in a movie. I got there early, nervous but weirdly calm. I waited on a bench, looking around for a woman who might look sick or fragile, but no one like that showed up. After 20 minutes, I texted her. No reply. 30 minutes, still nothing. Then a message popped up. It said, "You'll know me when you see me." I looked around again, confused. Then I noticed a couple walking toward me. The woman looked familiar, but not from her pictures. When they got closer, my stomach dropped. It was my ex-girlfriend, the one I hadn't seen in almost 3 years. She was holding hands with some guy. She stopped right in front of me and smiled, cold, small, knowing. The guy next to her was the one I'd seen once in her photos after we broke up, the new boyfriend. He looked at me like he was watching something unfold exactly how he wanted it to. That's when I realized it was him. He was Sophie. He'd made the account, used her pictures, used her old hospital posts from when her aunt was sick. He'd written those messages. He pretended to be dying, pretended to care, pretended to live through me, all for some twisted reason that I still can't wrap my head around. I stood up, staring at them, speechless. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Sophie's account. "Thanks for helping her see who you still are." He smiled as I read it, like he wanted me to know he'd won something. She didn't say a word, just looked away. It walked off together like nothing had happened. I deleted the chat right there. Every message, every picture, every stupid thing I'd said thinking I was helping someone who needed me. That night, I just sat in my car for hours. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to think about it. I just stared at the steering wheel, replaying everything. All the late night talks, all the still here messages. It was all him. The next morning, I got one last message before the account disappeared. It said, "She told me you'd fall for it. She was right." I don't know which part messed me up more, the fact that he did it, or that she must have helped him. Maybe they did it together. Maybe it was revenge for how things ended between us. I'll never know. It's been over a year now, and I still can't look at my phone the same way. Every time someone new messages me, I second guess it. I stopped sharing anything personal online. I barely even post pictures anymore. Sometimes I still get the urge to text, "Still here" to no one, just to feel like that part of it was real. But it never was. And maybe that's what stings the most, realizing that the person who made me feel seen again wasn't even a person at all, just a lie wearing someone else's face. I don't really talk to old friends anymore. Most of them moved, got married, had kids, or just turned into people I barely recognized. So when I got a message from Jake saying he used to know me from high school, I didn't think much of it. His profile picture looked kind of familiar. Short hair, big grin, one of those faces that make you think, yeah, at my event gym class with that guy. He said he found me through mutual friends. We started messaging, just catching up. He talked about the old town, about how things change, about the teachers we used to hate. It felt harmless, kind of nostalgic even. I figured maybe I was just being polite, keeping the conversation going. After a few days, though, he started talking like we were close. Said he remembered how we used to mess around after football practice, how we got detention together, all this stuff that didn't sound like me. I told him he must mix me up with someone else, but he insisted. He said, "Nah, man, it's you." I remember that laugh. That weirded me out, but I didn't push it. I just let him talk. We ended up chatting off and on for a few weeks. He told me he'd moved out of town, said life had been rough, went through a divorce, and was trying to start over. He sounded lonely, like he needed someone to talk to. I get that. Everyone's lonely in their own way, so I listened. Then he started asking me personal stuff, how my mom was doing, if I ever went back home to visit, if she still lived in the same house. That's when I paused. He knew where my mom lived. I hadn't told him. I asked how he knew, and he said, "You mentioned it years ago." But we'd only started talking a month ago. Something didn't add up. Still, I didn't say anything right away. I figured maybe he'd seen her address online or through some old school directory or something. But the more he talked, the more it felt like he knew things he shouldn't. He mentioned the color of her porch, the kind of dog she had, little details that creeped me out. One night, he sent me a long message about regret. Said he wished he treated people better. Said he lost contact with his family. Then he asked if I ever talked bad about people behind their backs. That one caught me off guard. I said, "I try not to." He said, "You didn't always." I laughed it off, but something about it stuck with me. The next day, he sent a picture. It was of him sitting on a couch I'd seen before, but not in any old photo, in person. I'd seen that couch when I visited my mom last month. It was hers. I stared at the photo for a long time before it hit me. Jake wasn't some guy from high school. He was my mom's new boyfriend. I'd met him once a few months earlier. She'd mentioned she'd been seeing someone, said he was kind and made her laugh. When I met him, he was polite but quiet, the kind of guy who smiles without showing teeth. I never thought much of it. I didn't even remember his name. But now looking at that photo, I knew it was him. He made a fake account to talk to me. I didn't get why. What was the point? He already knew who I was. Why pretend to be an old friend? I didn't respond for a while. I just stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then he sent another message. "I wanted to know what kind of man you really are." That made my blood boil. I called my mom right away. I didn't want to accuse her of anything, so I asked casually how things were going with her boyfriend. She said he was great, that he'd been talking about how he wanted to get to know me better, said I seemed distant. That word hit me wrong. Distant. That's exactly what he'd been saying to me through the messages. I hung up and went straight to her place that weekend. When I got there, he was sitting on the porch like he'd been waiting for me, smiling, calm, like nothing had happened. I didn't even bother with small talk. I told him I knew. He didn't deny it. He just nodded and said, "You talk about people differently online than you do in person." I asked him what the hell it was supposed to mean, and he said he wanted to see how I talked about my mom when she wasn't around. He said he'd made the account because he wanted to know if I respected her or if I was just pretending. I was too stunned to say anything at first. The nerve of this guy, pretending to be my friend just to test me. He said he wanted to protect her, make sure no one around her would hurt her again. I told him he'd gone too far. He said, "If that's the worst thing I've done, I can live with it." My mom came out halfway through the argument. I didn't want to drag her into it, but he'd already told her everything. She didn't even seem mad at him. She said he'd just been looking out for her. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. After that, things got weird. He'd try to make small talk whenever I came by, but it was forced. I could never look at him the same again. He still had that calm, steady look, like he was always a few steps ahead. My mom swore he was a good man, said he changed her life for the better. I couldn't argue with that. She seemed happy, maybe happier than she'd been in years. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me somehow. I started getting anonymous texts for a while, nothing threatening, just random comments like, your mom really loves you, or it's good you're visiting more. I don't know if it was him or just paranoia, but it felt connected. Eventually, I blocked every number I didn't recognize, stopped posting online, even deleted my old social accounts. It's been a year now and things are calmer, I guess. My mom and him are still together. She wants to get along. I go to family dinners, make small talk, pretend everything's fine. But sometimes when he looks at me, I catch this look in his eyes like he's measuring me again. Maybe he thinks he knows who I really am. Maybe he does. All I know is if Jake ever messages me again under any name, I won't answer. Not a single word. You know how people say therapy changes your life? Well, that's what I thought too. I'd been going for almost 6 months, every Thursday at 5, sitting in that same chair with the squeaky armrest, spilling my guts to this guy who barely blinked. I liked him though, Dr. Thomas. He had that calm voice that made you feel like everything you said was normal, even when it wasn't. So when I got a message from someone named Olivia one night saying she worked at his office, I didn't think twice about it. Her first message said, "Hey, I'm Dr. Thomas' new assistant. He mentioned you were one of his most consistent clients." That's awesome. I thought maybe it was some new office thing, like she was trying to be friendly with clients or whatever. I just replied, "Thanks, yeah, he's been great to talk to." She said she handled scheduling and was helping him with something called patient progress tracking. Sounded official enough. Over the next few weeks, she started messaging me more. Not in a professional way, more personal. She asked how I was feeling, how my week was going, if therapy was helping. At first, it felt nice, like someone was actually paying attention outside of the office. Then she started opening up about herself. Said she was studying to be a therapist, too, that she was new to the job and learning a lot from Dr. Thomas. She said sometimes it was hard not to get attached to patients' stories. I remember thinking that sounded a little odd to admit, but I didn't question it. We started chatting almost every day after that. She'd message late at night, sometimes just to vent. Said her ex had been emotionally distant, said she moved to a new city and didn't know many people yet. It felt more like talking to a friend than some random assistant. I started telling her things I hadn't even told Dr. Thomas. Stuff about my marriage, the guilt I carried, the things I wanted to say to my wife but couldn't. I didn't realize it then, but I think I was more open with Olivia than I'd ever been with anyone. After about a month of this, she stopped replying for a few days, just disappeared. I figured maybe she got busy with work, so I didn't think too hard about it. Then, during one of my therapy sessions, Dr. Thomas asked if I'd been speaking to anyone from the office outside of sessions. I froze. I said, "Just your assistant, Olivia." He looked confused. I'll never forget that face. His brow furrowed, and he said slowly, "I don't have an assistant named Olivia." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. He pulled up his tablet, checked his staff list, even called someone from the front desk. No Olivia, no new assistant. Nothing. My mouth went dry. I showed him the messages. He stared at them for a while, then asked, "How long has this been going on?" I told him. He leaned back and sighed, said he was worried something like this might happen. Apparently, it wasn't the first time someone had made a fake profile pretending to work for a therapist. But when he read through some of the messages, his expression changed from concern to something else. He asked me what kinds of things she'd said. I told him about her training, about the emotional stuff she'd shared. He nodded slowly, almost like he was connecting dots in his head. That's when he admitted it. There was no Olivia. He'd made the account. He said it was part of an unofficial boundary study. His words. He said he was trying to understand how patients form attachments beyond the therapy room, and whether they cross emotional lines if given the chance. He said he never meant to hurt me, that he wanted to observe how I communicated in an unfiltered space. I just sat there stunned. My brain couldn't even process it. He said it started as a professional experiment, but it got complicated. He admitted he didn't expect me to open up that much. He said he'd underestimated the connection. I didn't know whether to be angry, embarrassed, or just tired. The worst part was that it made sense. That's what made it hurt so much. Everything about her, the questions, the timing, the things she said, it all sounded exactly like him. I walked out halfway through the session. Didn't need to look back. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out if I should report him or just pretend it never happened. I couldn't even tell my wife. What would I say? My therapist catfished me. It sounded insane. He emailed me later that night. The subject line said, "Sincere apology." I didn't open it. For weeks, I kept thinking about the messages. I read them over and over, wondering if I'd missed clues. There were small ones, her phrasing, the way she always seemed to know what I was going to say next. I felt stupid for not noticing. I switched therapists after that. The new one's fine, I guess, but it's not the same. I can't really trust the process anymore. Every time I talk, I feel like someone's taking notes not to help me, but to study me. Months went by. Then one day, I got another message. This time from an unknown number. It said, "Do you still think about Olivia?" I blocked it immediately, but my heart was racing for hours. I didn't know if it was him or someone else, or maybe even a random coincidence. But it was enough to mess with my head all over again. I told my new therapist about it eventually. She said it sounded like emotional boundary trauma. I just call it being played. Sometimes when I look back, I can't decide which part was worse, the fact that my therapist lied to me or the fact that I actually missed Olivia after she disappeared. That's the part I hate the most, because she wasn't even real. And still, late at night, when I'm lying awake staring at the ceiling, I catch myself thinking about what she'd say, about how she'd always check in, ask if I was doing better, if I was still fighting through. It's stupid, I know, but some lies stick harder than the truth. Now, I only do therapy online, but I keep my camera off. I barely say anything. I tell them the basics, answer questions, keep it surface level. No more personal details, no more attachments. It's not that I don't believe in therapy anymore, I just don't believe in therapists. And if anyone ever messages me again saying they work for one, I won't even open it. Because now I know what help can look like when it's really just someone pulling strings to see how far you'll go before you break. It started with a message that looked like a mistake. "Hey man, I need help." That was all it said. No context, no name. Just those 4 words. I almost ignored it. Figured it was spam, but something made me reply. I said, "Who's this?" And he answered, "My name's Noah. I'm 15. I've got your number from a community page. Please don't tell anyone." That got my attention. 15. The kind of age where everything feels like the end of the world. I asked what was wrong, and he said he needed someone to talk to, that things at home were bad, that his parents didn't listen. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I couldn't just ignore him. I told him it was okay that he could talk to me if he needed to. I thought maybe he was one of those kids who found my old posts on a local forum where people gave advice about jobs and like stuff. It wasn't weird at first. He was polite, awkward the way teenagers are. Said he liked music, wanted to be a mechanic someday. He messaged me late at night, usually after his parents went to bed. He said his dad yelled a lot and his mom just stayed quiet through it. I listened. I told him to hang in there, to focus on school, to try to talk to a counselor. I even sent him a few numbers for helplines. He always said he was too scared to call. I started checking in on him every few days. Just quick messages like, "You good?" or "How's school?" I didn't think it was strange. I've got a son around that age, so maybe I just slipped into that dad mode without realizing it. A few months went by, and we'd gotten into this habit of talking like old friends. He'd vent and listen. Sometimes I give advice about life, about how people aren't always as bad as they seem, about how anger fades if you let it. It made me feel like I was doing something good. One night, he said something that stuck with me. He said, "You're the only one who actually listens." That hit me. I didn't think about how weird it sounded or how wrong it might look from the outside. I just felt bad for him. Then things started to get strange. He began asking more personal stuff, like what kind of house I live in, what my wife was like, if I had kids. I tried to keep it surface level, but he pushed for details. He'd ask what my son was like, what time we ate dinner, even what our backyard looked like. One day, he sent me a message that said, "Sometimes I wish you were my dad." I didn't know what to say to that. I just told him he should talk to his parents, that I was sure they cared more than he thought. He didn't reply for a whole day after that. When he did, he said, "I told him about you." My stomach dropped. I didn't even know what he meant. I asked what he'd said. He said that I talked to you. They got mad. They said they're going to call someone. I panicked. I told him to delete our messages, that this wasn't appropriate, that I was just trying to help. He said he was sorry, that he didn't mean to cause trouble. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was a man's voice, calm but sharp. He said, "This is about Noah." He told me he was Noah's father. My heart was racing. I started explaining, trying to say I was just trying to help, but he cut me off. He said, "We don't have a son named Noah." I couldn't speak. I just sat there holding the phone like it was about to explode. He said they found messages on their Wi-Fi logs from an adult neighbor pretending to be a teenager. Said it wasn't the first time this guy had done something like that. Apparently, he'd been messaging random people online using fake profiles, pretending to be a kid in trouble, recording conversations, and showing them around like some sick joke. I didn't even know what to say. I asked who he was talking about, and he said the name. It was the guy 2 houses down from me, the quiet one, the one who always waited from his porch, but never said much. I hung up and just sat there staring at my phone. I felt sick. All those messages, all those late night talks. I thought I was helping someone, but the whole time, I was talking to a grown man pretending to be a kid. I walked outside and saw his truck in the driveway. For a second, I wanted to march over and confront him, but I didn't. I just stood there staring at the house, wondering how far it had gone, if he'd been watching me the whole time. Later that day, I saw police cars outside his house. They didn't arrest him or anything, but they were there for a while. The next week, he moved out. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. I wish that was the end of it, but it messed with my head for a long time. I kept replaying every conversation, wondering what he got out of it. Did he record me? Was he laughing while I was pouring out advice like an idiot? Was he showing it to people? For weeks, I felt paranoid. I deleted every app, every account. I told my wife part of what happened, just that I'd been messaging someone who turned out not to be who they said they were. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to be mad or worried. I didn't blame her. Even now, when my phone buzzes with an unknown number, I hesitate to answer. I don't trust anyone online anymore. It's like this switch flipped in my head. Every username feels fake. Every story sounds rehearsed. Sometimes I still think about that message. "Hey man, I need help." Those 4 words. How easy it was to hook me. How easy it was to turn something decent into something that looked awful. I didn't even do anything wrong, but I still feel guilty. Like I should have known better. Like I walked into a trap built out of sympathy. The worst part, a few months after he moved, a new neighbor moved in, a single mom with an actual teenage son named Noah. Every time I see that kid riding his bike past my driveway, I think about how one fake message almost wrecked my life. So now, when people post online about helping strangers or being there for those in need, I scroll right past. Not because I don't care, but because I do. Too much. And I learned the hard way that caring can look bad in the wrong hands. If some real kid out there ever messages me again asking for help, I'll want to reply. I'll want to listen. But I probably won't. Because in this world, you never really know who's on the other side of the screen or what they're getting out of hearing you care. The first message from Hannah came through on a random Tuesday night, right when I was halfway through microwaving leftovers and trying to ignore the TV. It wasn't one of those fake, spammy things either. It looked real. She said she'd gotten my name through a community page where people talked about mental health awareness and local outreach. Her message said, "Hey, I'm starting a support group for domestic abuse survivors. I saw your comments on one of the posts. You seem like someone who gets it." I didn't really get it. I'd never been through anything like that, not directly, but I made a few posts about empathy and listening without judging. Maybe that's what caught her eye. So I replied, said I wasn't exactly a survivor, but I'd be glad to help however I could. She thanked me and said she was looking for people who could share stories, not just their own, but maybe stories from people they knew. Said it could help others feel less alone. That hit me. It sounded like something meaningful, something good. We started messaging back and forth about the group. She said it was going to be small, private, only a few people to start. She said she'd already talked to some folks at a shelter downtown who were interested. I told her I could maybe share a story about my cousin. He'd gone through some rough stuff with his ex years ago. She said that was perfect. After that, we talked almost every day. Not just about the group, but about life. She told me she'd been in an abusive marriage herself that she'd left 2 years ago and was still picking up the pieces. She said she wanted to do something that mattered, something that helped people feel less broken. The way she wrote made her feel real. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't fishing for pity, just honest. I could tell she'd been through something. She asked if I'd ever been hurt like that, emotionally, not physically. I told her about my divorce, how I'd felt small and invisible for years. She said that counted too. She said people underestimate emotional damage. It started to feel less like two people planning something and more like two people confessing to each other. She'd message late at night sometimes, saying she couldn't sleep, that old memories kept her awake. I'd reply without thinking, telling her to get easier. She'd thank me, then ask more about my marriage, how it ended, how I felt about my ex. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was telling her everything. She said she was writing an article too, something personal she wanted to publish under a pen name about the hidden pain of good men. I laughed when she said that, told her it sounded too kind, but she said it was true, said men didn't get enough credit for surviving emotional abuse too. That one line made me trust her more than I should have. Weeks passed. The support group never really happened. Every time I asked about it, she said she was still finalizing things. I didn't push. I figured she had enough going on. Then one day she sent me a long message. It said she'd been working on something special, that she wanted me to see it before anyone else. She sent me a link to an article draft. The title said, Letters from the Quiet Ones. I started reading, and my stomach dropped about 2 paragraphs in. It was my story. My words. Things I'd said to her in messages. The jokes I made. The details about my ex, my job, my loneliness. It was all there. Edited slightly, but still clearly me. She'd written it like it was some anonymous submission. But it wasn't anonymous at all. Anyone who knew me could connect to the dots. I messaged her right away, asking what the hell she was doing. She replied, calm as ever, saying she'd changed names and it was important people saw the truth. She said it wasn't about me, it was about the story. That didn't make me feel any better. I told her to delete it, that she didn't have my permission to share anything. She said she didn't need it, that people shared stories online all the time. I didn't even finish the conversation. I just blocked her. A few days later, the article went live on some blog. I found it because a friend texted me saying, this sounds a lot like you. My chest went tight. I opened the link and there it was. My story twisted, with quotes from me turned into something dramatic and fake. She made it sound I was some broken man who couldn't move on, who was desperate for validation. The comments under the post were the worst. People calling the man in the story pathetic, manipulative, emotionally stunted. I tried to contact the site to take it down, but they said the author had confirmed all sources were anonymous and protected. I couldn't prove it was me. For a while, I thought about emailing her again, demanding she fix it. But then I saw her post another article, this one titled, The Men Who Pretend to Care. That one was worse. It wasn't about me exactly, but I knew pieces of it came from our chats. She'd written about how some men play the role of an emotional savior online just to feed their own egos. That part stung the most, because deep down, maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe part of me liked the feeling of being needed. Maybe that's what made me blind to what she was really doing. I stopped posting online completely after that, deleted my old accounts, even left the community page where it started. A few months later, I saw her name pop up again, this time on a podcast about emotional storytelling. Her voice was soft, calm, familiar. She talked about how she found meaning in other people's pain. She said her goal was to shine light on the silence. It made my blood boil hearing her talk about empathy while using people's stories like stepping stones. I almost sent her one last message, something short like, you ruined my trust in everyone. But I didn't. She probably would have just read it and turned it into another quote. Now when people message me online, I keep it short. One word replies, nothing personal. I don't share anything real anymore. It's strange. I thought I was helping her build something honest. Turns out I was just helping her build a story she could sell. And in the end, that's all I ever was to her content. A name that never made it into print, but still existed between her words. Sometimes I still check that blog, half hoping the posts got taken down. They never do. I guess that's the thing about the internet. Once you tell someone your truth, it's not yours anymore. Eddie showed up on my phone screen one night when I was bored out of my mind. I'd been swiping through a dating app just to kill time, not really looking for anything serious. His profile was simple. No fancy quotes, no filters, just a regular looking guy holding a coffee and smiling like he didn't care if anyone swiped right or not. His bio said, "I like road trips and bad diner coffee." It felt real. We matched, and he messaged first. "You seem like someone who doesn't fake laugh." That made me smile. We started chatting, and it was easy from the start. He wasn't trying too hard, wasn't acting like every other guy down there. He asked about my day, my job, my favorite food. It felt normal, which I didn't realize I'd missed until then. We talked every day for weeks. It became this routine. He'd message me before work, check in around lunch, and then we'd stay up late talking about nothing and everything. He told me he'd recently moved to my city to be closer to family. Said he didn't know many people yet. I believed him. He was funny too. Not in that forced way. He'd send dumb memes and call himself a disaster with good intentions. I told him he should put that on his bio. He said he would if I agreed to meet him. I laughed it off, but deep down I was tempted. After a month of talking, he said he wanted to meet for real. I said maybe. I wasn't ready yet, not after the mess my marriage had been. He didn't push, which made me like him more. Around that time, he started asking questions about my personal life. Stuff like if I'd ever been married, if I was close to my in-laws, if my family got along. I told him bits and pieces, nothing crazy. He listened, always careful not to judge. One night, I mentioned my husband, well, ex-husband, technically, and how things had fallen apart. He didn't say much after that. Just said, people don't always show their real faces until they have to. I thought maybe it scared him off. But the next morning, he messaged again like nothing happened. Same energy, same humor. I didn't think twice about it. Then one Friday night, he sent me a message that felt different. He said, "If I tell you something, promise you won't hate me." I said, "Depends what it is." He waited a while before replying. Then he said, "You know your ex-husband's cousin, the one named Ed." My chest tightened. I knew that name. Everyone in the family called him Eddie. I stared at the screen, not sure if it was some kind of joke. I typed, "Yeah, what of him?" His next message came fast. "That's me." I felt like someone had punched me. I scrolled up through our messages, my heart pounding. The stories he told about his life, his family, his job, they weren't made up. They were just edited versions of the truth. He said he'd known about my profile for a while. Said he made a fake account because he wanted to see who I really was when I wasn't performing for the family. I couldn't believe it. I asked him why. He said he'd always been curious about me, that my ex used to talk about me like I was the reason everything went wrong in their marriage. He wanted to see for himself. It was insane. I didn't even know how to respond. I just sat there staring at the phone, trying to piece it together. Every compliment, every sweet message, every "you seem different," it all had this hidden layer I hadn't seen. I told him he was messed up. He said I had every right to think that, but swore he hadn't meant it to go that far. Said he started it out of curiosity, but kept talking because he actually liked me. That made it worse. I blocked him, deleted the app, tried to move on. But he didn't stop there. A few days later, I got a message on Facebook from his real account. "You didn't have to block me," it said. I didn't reply. The next day, he messaged again. "You think he deserved you? You think you were innocent?" That's when I realized what this really was. It wasn't curiosity. It was revenge. I called my ex. I don't even know why. I guess I wanted to warn him or maybe just see his reaction. He sounded confused at first, then angry. He said, "What'd you do?" I said, "Ask your cousin." After that, everything blew up. My ex-cousin, Eddie, had apparently been telling people in the family that I was flirting with him online. He made it sound like I knew it was him from the start. He even showed screenshots, messages he twisted to make me look like I was the one crossing lines. I tried to explain the truth, but no one cared. They already had their story. My ex sent me a long message saying I was proving everyone right. That one hurt. It got worse when Eddie posted a vague status online about how some people never change. A few mutual relatives liked it. I felt sick. After that, I stopped showing up to family events, even ones involving my kids. My ex handled the drop-offs and holidays. I didn't want to see anyone. Months went by. I kept thinking about the messages, wondering at what point he decided to start lying. Was it from the beginning? Or did he start to enjoy it somewhere in the middle? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how personal it all was. He knew exactly what to say to get me to open up. He'd grown up hearing stories about me, and he'd use them like ammunition. I started getting weird anonymous emails too. Just blank ones with subject lines like, "Still think you're innocent," or "Family sees everything." I couldn't prove it was him, but I knew. I finally changed my number, made new accounts, moved on as best I could. But the damage was done. My reputation in that family was gone. I haven't heard from Eddie in almost 2 years now, but sometimes when I see a new profile pop up with no picture and a weird name, I wonder if it's him. It's crazy how someone can twist kindness into a weapon. How someone you barely talk to in real life can crawl into your personal space like that and make it all feel fake. Now I don't use dating apps at all. I barely talk to people online. If someone messages me, I delete it. I don't care if it's harmless. I don't trust it. Sometimes I think about that first message he sent me, about how simple it was, how innocent it looked. "You seem like someone who doesn't fake laugh." He was right. I wasn't faking anything, but he was. And that's what made it so easy for him to ruin everything. You ever get pulled into something that sounds like a movie plot and then realize halfway through that it's your actual life? That's how it went with Grace. It started with a flat tire. I was parked outside a gas station, cursing under my breath because it was pouring rain, and I had no idea how to work the stupid jack. That's when she came up. Said her name was Grace, said she lived nearby, and offered to help. She had one of those calm, steady voices that made you think everything was gonna be fine. She didn't even seem bothered by the rain. We talked while she helped me get the spare on. She joked about how she wasn't supposed to get her hands dirty because her fiancé was too proud of his car to let her near it. I laughed and said she was probably the one keeping his car running anyway. That got a smile out of her. She said she was leaving town soon, that she needed to get away for a while. I didn't ask why, but she said it anyway. "I'm running from him," she said. I thought she was kidding. She wasn't. That's how it started. Just this strange, unexpected moment in the rain that somehow turned into something bigger. Over the next week, she kept popping up. She messaged me, asking if I was okay, if my tire was holding up, if I needed help with anything else. We started talking more, not in a romantic way at first, just two people who somehow found comfort in each other's random stories. Then she told me her fiancé was controlling, said he had a temper, said she wanted to disappear before things got worse. I told her she should talk to the police or at least a friend, but she said she couldn't. She said nobody believed her. I didn't know what to do, so I just listened. That's all she really seemed to want. But then she said she needed help. She had this plan to fake her own disappearance, just long enough to scare him into leaving her alone. I told her that was crazy. She said she'd already started, deleted her social media, quit her job, told people she was going to visit family. She asked if she could use my garage for a few days. Said she'd pay me $500. I laughed, thought she was joking again. She wasn't. She showed up that same night with a small bag, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I should have said no, I know that now, but I looked at her and saw someone terrified, so I said yes. She stayed in the garage for 3 days. Barely talked, barely ate. She'd text me sometimes from out there, saying thank you, saying she'd explain everything soon. I kept telling myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just helping someone in trouble. On the fourth night, she said she was ready. Said she had to go through with it. She left before sunrise, left the $500 in an envelope on my workbench, and disappeared. A few days later, her picture was on the local news. Missing woman, Grace Porter. Last seen near a gas station. Police asking for information. My stomach dropped when I saw it. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't told anyone she'd been at my place. I didn't even know if she'd really been running or if I just helped someone commit a crime. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. It said, "Thank you for helping me disappear." I didn't reply. Then another message came, "He'll never hurt anyone again." That one made me freeze. I couldn't sleep. My brain kept looping through every possibility. Had she done something to him? Was I involved now? 2 days later, the police came knocking. They asked if I'd seen her. I told them the truth, that she helped me with a tire, that I saw her once after that but didn't know where she went, They seemed suspicious, but they didn't push it. A week went by, then another, then everything flipped again. I was scrolling through the news when I saw an update. Grace Porter found safe. I clicked it so fast my hand hurt. The article said she hadn't been missing at all. Said she was working with her brother to expose her fiancé's cheating. Her brother. That's when it hit me. She never had a brother. She'd never mentioned one. Unless that was who she'd meant by, he'll never hurt anyone again. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man said, "You helped my sister. Thank you." Before I could ask who it was, he hung up. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I went online, searched her name again, and that's when I found the real twist. Turns out Grace wasn't the one running. She never planned to disappear. Her fiancé had been accused of cheating, and Grace's sister, not her brother, had created the whole Grace is missing act to trap him. She used fake accounts, planted messages, even contacted people like me to make it look real. So the woman I helped wasn't Grace at all. It was her sister. The police eventually dropped the case. They said it was a family misunderstanding, but I was left sitting there wondering how I ended up in the middle of it. A month later, I saw Grace's real face on the news again, an interview this time. She was calm, collected, saying the rumors had been exaggerated. But when she smiled at the camera, I swear it was the same smile the other woman had when she left my garage. That's when I realized something. The woman I met wasn't Grace's sister either. She was Grace. She'd just been playing everyone. Why? I don't know. Maybe she wanted to make her fiancé look guilty. Maybe she wanted to disappear for real. Or maybe she just liked controlling the story. After all that, I stopped helping strangers. I don't care how scared they look. I learned my lesson. A few weeks later, I found another envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was $500 and a note that said, "For your silence." I burned it. Now when it rains, I always think about that night at the gas station. The sound of her voice, calm and sure. The way she said she was running. The way I believed her. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if she's still out there somewhere, pretending to be someone else, starting over again. And I wonder if the next person she meets will be as stupid as I was, kind enough to help, and blind enough not to ask the right questions. The thing about working long hours in an office is that everyone starts to blur together. Same shirts, same fake smiles, same small talk about weekends that nobody actually cares about. So when Aiden messaged me one afternoon on the company chat system, I didn't think twice. His name wasn't familiar, but big companies always have people floating around from other departments. He said, "Hey, I saw your profile on the internal list. You free for coffee later?" I thought it was a weird way to introduce himself, but he said he was new and trying to meet people. He told me he worked in finance, said he transferred from another branch. His profile picture was this clean-cut guy, mid-40s maybe, kind of quiet looking. Nothing about him stood out. We met up at the break area that afternoon. He was exactly like his picture, polite, put together, but not stiff. He asked about my job, how long I'd been with the company, the usual stuff. Then he started asking about life outside work. I didn't mind. He had that kind of tone that made you feel like he actually cared. He said he'd lost his wife a few years ago. Cancer. He said that's why he transferred to start fresh. I didn't know what to say except, "That sucks, man." He nodded and said, "Yeah, but it helps to talk about it." After that, we started meeting up for lunch every couple of days. Nothing deep at first, just easy conversation. He was one of those people who could make even silence feel comfortable. Then he started opening up more. Said he was struggling being alone. Said he still woke up reaching for his wife sometimes. He told me how she used to leave him notes in his briefcase. Little things like, "Drink more water," or "You got this." He'd laugh when he said it, but there was this way behind it. I started feeling sorry for him. He messaged me outside work too, asking how my day was going, if my wife and I were doing okay, stuff like that. I figured he was just lonely, and I didn't mind keeping him company. Then one night, he said he couldn't sleep and asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I almost said no, it was late, and I had an early meeting, but I felt bad, so I went. We met at this quiet bar near the office. He talked about his wife again, how hard the first anniversary without her had been. He said he envied people who still had something to come home to. I told him marriage wasn't all sunshine, that it takes work. He smiled at that, said he could tell I was one of the good ones. The next few weeks, things got weird. He started messaging me more during work hours, stuff that didn't sound like friendly conversation anymore. Compliments about how I handled people in meetings, how I had leadership energy. It was subtle, but enough to make me uncomfortable. Then one day, I got called into HR. My stomach dropped the second I saw the email. The subject line said, "Confidential discussion." When I walked in, my manager and a woman from HR were waiting. They asked how well I knew someone named Aiden. I said we'd met a few times, that we had lunch and talked a bit. They exchanged a look, then told me the truth. There was no Aiden in the finance department. There was no transfer. The man I'd been meeting didn't even exist in the system. The HR rep explained that someone from management had been running an internal compliance test. They said it was meant to check how employees handled personal relationships during work hours, whether people shared private information, talked negatively about the company, or crossed any ethical lines. Aiden was my test. Every chat, every lunch, every after-hours message, it was all part of some corporate program to evaluate boundaries. I couldn't even speak. I just sat there, trying to figure out if they were serious. They showed me the file. Every message had been logged. Notes about my behavior. Summaries of my conversations. The woman from HR said, "You actually did quite well. You maintained professionalism in most cases." Most cases, that phrase burned into my head. They said I'd technically broken no rules, but recommended I revisit the company's ethics policy. It felt like a slap in the face. I left that meeting in a daze. I didn't even go back to my desk. I just grabbed my stuff and went home. That night, I scrolled through my phone, looking at all the messages from Aiden. Every photo he sent, every story about his wife, every "thanks for listening." It all read fake now. I couldn't believe someone had sat there behind a computer pretending to be a grieving man just to test me. A few days later, HR sent a follow-up email thanking me for my cooperation. I never replied. For weeks after that, I couldn't focus at work. Every time someone messaged me, I wondered if they were real. I stopped eating lunch with anyone. I'd just sit at my desk, headphones in, pretending to be busy. Eventually, I quit. I told my wife it was burnout, but that wasn't it. I just couldn't stand the thought that my company had tricked me into caring about a person who didn't exist. About a month after leaving, I got a LinkedIn message. The name was familiar, but the profile was blank. Just a gray avatar. The message said, "No hard feelings. You were one of the better ones." I blocked it immediately, but my hands were shaking for hours afterward. Sometimes I still wonder if that was him, whoever he really was. Maybe some HR guy trying to justify his research. Or maybe it was someone higher up who thought playing mind games counted as management. What gets me most is that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't flirting. I wasn't bad-mouthing anyone. I was just being decent. But somehow that got turned into data points on a spreadsheet. It's strange how something as simple as a friendly message can twist into something that makes you question every interaction afterward. Now, I work from home for a small business. No big teams, no company chat rooms, no random new hires messaging about coffee. If someone new emails me, I keep it short, straight to the point. Sometimes when I'm cleaning out old folders, I'll find screenshots of those chats. I always delete them fast, but for a second, I'll catch myself thinking about the way Aiden talked, the pauses, the phrasing, the small, careful empathy that only a professional could fake that perfectly. And then I remember that's exactly what he was, a professional liar. I guess I should have seen it coming. Nobody's that nice in a corporate building. Nobody tells you they're paying unless they want something from it. Now I drink my coffee alone. Not because I like it that way, but because I know the next person who asks to join me might not even be real. I don't really know where to start with this one. It's weird because every time I think about Nathalie, I feel this mix of guilt and confusion that I can't really explain. I didn't do anything wrong exactly, but it still feels like I did. Maybe because of what I didn't see, or maybe because I didn't recognize what was right in front of me. It started about 2 years ago, just after I'd moved to a smaller place across town. I'd gone through a rough patch, divorce, job change, all of it hitting at once. The new place was quiet, which was good and bad at the same time. It gave me space to breathe, but also space to think too much. I started spending more time online, joining random forums and message boards just to talk to people. That's where I met Natalie. She messaged me one night after I commented on some post about being a single parent. Her message said, "Hey, I really liked what you wrote. My daughter feels the same way about her dad." I thanked her and didn't think much else about it. But she replied again, asking questions about my own kid, how old they were, and if we still talked. That one hit me because the truth was I hadn't seen my daughter in a long time. Natalie said her daughter was 16 and that she always talked about how much she missed her dad, how she wished he'd been more patient, more present. I don't know why, but I told her the truth. I told her I'd been a lousy dad for a while. Work took over, I was angry all the time. And then one day, I looked up and realized she wanted nothing to do with me. Natalie didn't judge. She just listened. Or, I guess, typed. She said, "I think people forget that parents are humans too." That line stuck with me. We talked for hours that night. She said she'd been a single mom for a few years, that her daughter was shy and artistic, loved music, but had stopped trusting people after being let down too many times. I told her I could relate to that in more ways than one. Over the next few months, we talked almost every night. Nothing romantic, nothing weird. Just two people who understood each other's loneliness. She'd tell me stories about her daughter, how she'd draw pictures for her but never show them, how she'd sometimes lock herself in her room for hours just listening to sad songs. I'd tell her about my regrets, how I kept replaying old moments, wondering when exactly I lost my kid. She once said, "You sound like the kind of dad my daughter wishes she had." I didn't know what to do with that. I wanted to say something nice back, but all I could manage was, "If that's true, then I wish I'd met her sooner." That's the thing about online friendships. You start to forget there's a screen between you. It starts feeling real. One night, she said her daughter had drawn a picture of me based on how I described myself. She said she wanted to capture what she thinks a real dad should look like. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She sent a photo of it, a pencil sketch of a man with tired eyes holding a small coffee cup. It didn't look exactly like me, but something about it felt familiar. After that, I started thinking about them more and more. Natalie would talk about her daughter like she was this fragile, quiet kid who didn't know how to reach out. I told her she should encourage her to talk to her dad again if she could. Natalie said, maybe one day when she's ready. Then one day, Natalie said she and her daughter were going to be nearby for a short trip. She said her daughter wanted to meet me, just to say thanks for the things I'd said about being a better parent. I said I didn't know if that was a good idea, but she said it wasn't about me. It was about helping her daughter heal. I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the park. I remember sitting there nervous, looking around for a woman and a teenage girl. A few minutes later, someone walked in, but it wasn't what I expected. There was no daughter, just Natalie. At least, that's what I thought. She walked over, sat down, and smiled at me like she'd known me forever. She looked a little older than I'd pictured, with tired eyes but a kind face. I said, "Where's your daughter?" She looked down at the table, then back up at me. She said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" My chest went cold. I didn't get it. I just stared at her. She smiled again, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was sad. Then she said, "It's me. I'm your daughter." For a few seconds, I couldn't even process it. I just sat there staring, trying to make sense of the words. She said she wanted to see if I'd talk to her without knowing who she was. Said she wanted to know if I'd change, if I'd still be defensive or angry or distant. She said she used a fake name because she didn't think I'd talk to her otherwise. I felt sick. Everything she'd said about her daughter had been about herself. The drawings, the late-night talks, the stories about feeling forgotten, they were all hers. She'd been telling me about her own pain without me realizing it. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight. She said, "You were kinder to a stranger than you ever were to me." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd always loved her, that I just didn't know how to show it. But the words wouldn't come out. We sat there for a long time in silence. She eventually stood up and said she'd message me later. She never did. I haven't seen her since. For months, I kept checking that old account, waiting for a message that never came. I tried reaching out, but she deleted everything. I found out through a mutual friend that she'd moved to another city. I still have that sketch she sent me, the one she said her daughter drew. Sometimes I take it out and stare at it, wondering how I didn't see it. The face, the eyes. It's her style. I remember her drawing like that when she was little. She used to sketch me sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee. Now, every time I look at that picture, I see both of us in it, the man I used to be and the daughter I lost somewhere along the way. I don't know if she'll ever talk to me again, but I keep hoping that maybe one day she'll send another message, even if it's just to tell me she's okay. Because even though I didn't recognize her, I'd know her voice anywhere now. And if she ever does message me again, I'll make sure I seek her for who she really is this time. I wasn't planning on talking to anyone new when I met Logan. It just sort of happened one boring weekend. I'd been divorced for about 6 months, and a silence in my place felt like a punishment. I'd scroll through apps or social pages just to fill the time. One night, I posted something dumb about trying to fix my kitchen sink and ending up flooding the counter. A few people commented, and one of them was this guy named Logan. He said, "At least you tried, man. Most people just call a plumber and cry about the bill." I laughed, replied something back, and that was it, or so I thought. He messaged me the next day, said he'd been through the same thing when he moved into his new place. We started talking about home repairs of all things. Then it turned into music, sports, random life stuff. He was funny, had this dry way of talking that made even boring stories sound good. He said he was a contractor who traveled a lot for work, and that the only time he felt at peace was when he was fixing things with his hands. That sounded familiar, like something I'd say myself. We talked every few days after that. It didn't feel weird or forced, just like talking to a buddy. We'd send pictures of projects we were working on. He'd send one of a half-finished deck. I'd send a photo of the shelf I'd finally put up straight. It was easy real. Then one night, he brought up relationships. He said he'd been through a divorce too, said it nearly broke him. We started trading stories about how messy things got, how you can live with someone for years and still not really know them. He said, "It's crazy how you can sleep next to a stranger for 10 years. I remember replying, "Yeah, you can live next to them too." After that, the talks got deeper. He'd ask questions that hit close to home. Stuff like, "Do you ever miss her?" Or "Would you ever try again?" I'd answer honestly. I told him some of the things that happened after my divorce, the fights with my ex, the guilt, the loneliness. It felt good to let it out to someone who actually got it. One night, he said he wanted to call. Just a quick chat, voice to voice. I said sure. His voice sounded younger than I expected, but still familiar somehow. He said the same thing about mine, said it was weird, but in a good way. We talked for almost 2 hours that night about everything, life, regrets, starting over. It felt like I'd known him for years. After a few weeks, he started joking that I was his therapy buddy. We laughed about how sad it was that two grown men were trauma dumping on each other over text. But honestly, it helped. I started looking forward to his messages. Then one day he said something strange. He said, "I never thought I'd actually get to talk to you like this." I thought it was just a weird way of saying thanks, so I ignored it, but he said it again a few days later. He sent me a long message one night that started with, "There's something I should tell you." I could feel my stomach drop before I even opened it. He said his name wasn't Logan. He said he hadn't been honest with me. He said he was my brother. At first, I thought it was a joke. I literally typed, "Yeah, right." But then he started listing details only family would know: our old address, the color of our childhood bedroom, the dog we had that got hit by a car. I felt my hands go cold. He said he'd made the account to see how I treated people now, especially men, after my divorce. He said he watched how I talked about women, how I described mom, how I talked about my ex. I couldn't even process it. My own brother pretending to be someone else just to test me. We hadn't talked much since the divorce. He took her side mostly, said I needed to look in the mirror and own up to my mistakes. I guess this was his way of checking if I'd actually change. I didn't reply at first. I just sat there staring at the messages, feeling this mix of anger and shame. Every joke, every personal thing I'd told him, he'd been there behind a fake name, nodding along like some stranger. He sent one last message before I blocked him. It said, "At least now I know you're trying." Trying. That word stung more than anything else, like I'd been some test he finally got the results for. I didn't talk to him for months after that. My mom kept asking if we'd made up. I couldn't even explain what happened without sounding insane. Eventually, I told her a version of the truth, that we fought again. She didn't press. She always said we were too similar for our own good. I didn't unblock him, but he found ways to slip into my life anyway. He'd like old posts on my social media, comment on photos with stuff like, "Proud of you, man." I'd delete them. About a year later, I got a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photo. It was me and him, both of us as kids, sitting on the front steps of our old house. On the back, in his handwriting, it said, "You're still my brother." I didn't know whether to cry or burn it. I kept it, though. It's in a drawer somewhere. I think the part that gets me the most is how well he pulled it off. He knew exactly how to talk to me, how to sound like someone I trust. He knew what I needed to hear. He said all the right things because he knew all the right memories. Now, I don't open up to anyone the same way, even when people seem genuine and I hold back. I've learned that sometimes the people who want to get to know the real you already do, they just want to see what you'll admit when you think you're safe. Funny thing is, I still catch myself missing Logan sometimes. Not my brother, but the fake friend I thought I had. The version of him that listened, laughed, understood. That's the part that messes with your head. He didn't just pretend to be someone else. He became the kind of person I actually needed in my life. Now when my phone buzzes with a new message from an unknown number, I don't even check. I just delete it. Because once you've been lied to by your own blood, you stop believing there's anyone real on the other end. And if there is, I'm not sure I want to know. It's strange how people come into your life when you least expect it. Sometimes it's for a reason, sometimes it's just bad timing. I met Isabella during one of those stretches where I wasn't really looking for anyone but kind of hoping something interesting might happen anyway. It started with an email, not one of those fake scam ones, but a real decent looking message from a college student. She said she was studying psychology and doing a project about emotional communication and online friendships. She said she was reaching out to random people who seemed open and reflective based on their comments in public forums. I didn't think much of it. I've been leaving long comments on a discussion site about human behavior, mostly because I like talking about why people do what they do. Her message felt respectful, not pushy. She asked if I'd be willing to answer a few questions about online empathy. I said sure. Her name was Isabella. She said she was 24, studying behavioral psychology, and that she liked using real-world conversations instead of lab surveys. It all sounded legit. She even attached a short consent form and her university email signature. At first, it was all academic. She asked questions like, "Why do you think people are more honest online?" Or "Do you feel people can form real bonds without meeting in person?" I gave thoughtful answers, long ones. I kind of like having someone ask me about how I think. She said my answers were really insightful. That word made me smile. We emailed back and forth for a while before she suggested switching to chat, since she said the responses were easier to record that way. We moved to messaging, and that's when things started to feel more personal. She began asking about my own experiences, if I'd ever felt emotionally connected to someone online, if I'd ever confided in a stranger. I told her about the time after my divorce when I talked to random people online because I couldn't talk to anyone in real life. She said that kind of vulnerability was valuable data. We kept talking even after she said her project was wrapping up. She told me to become one of her favorite participants. She said I had a way of describing emotions that felt raw and real. I don't know why, but that hit me hard. Nobody had ever said anything like that before. After that, our talks weren't really about the project anymore. She'd ask about my day, tell me about her classes, her stress, her friends. She said she sometimes felt like people only saw her as a student, not as a person. I told her I knew what that felt like, to be seen for what you do instead of who you are. Over time, I started looking forward to her messages. She was smart, funny, curious, the kind of person who made silence feel comfortable instead of awkward. I never thought of it as anything romantic. It just felt human. Then one day she told me she was thinking about turning her project into her thesis. She said she wanted to focus on how people open up emotionally when they think they're part of something academic or anonymous. That sounded interesting, so I said she should go for it. She said she already had, and that her professor thought her results were fascinating. A few days later, she sent me a draft of her paper. I read it in one sitting. It started off normal, talking about emotional detachment, online anonymity, all the usual psych stuff. But halfway through, I started recognizing things. Sentences. Stories. My stories. Word for word. She'd used my emails, my messages, my personal confessions, all quoted in the paper. My thoughts about loneliness, my reflections on love and guilt, everything. She changed the name, sure, but it was still me. Anyone who knew me could have spotted it. I stared at the screen for a long time before messaging her. I said, Isabella, you used my messages in your paper. She replied, yes, I thought you'd be proud. You said it yourself. You wanted to be understood. That line made my chest hurt. I told her she should have asked first. She said she didn't need to because I'd signed the consent form at the beginning. She wasn't wrong. I had signed it. I told her that didn't mean she could use personal things like that. She said, you're missing the point. I didn't just use your words, you became the point. That freaked me out. I told her to delete everything to remove me from her work. She said she couldn't, that the paper had already been submitted and that her professor loved it. For a while after that, I stopped replying. But she didn't stop writing. She'd send long messages about how I'd helped her understand emotional manipulation, how my reactions showed authentic vulnerability, how she'd never met someone who fit the study's patterns so perfectly. That word again, perfectly. I didn't reply. Weeks went by. Then one night she messaged again saying she was graduating soon and she wanted to thank me. She said she wouldn't have gotten through the year without me. She said she meant that personally, not academically. I didn't believe her, but I didn't block her either. A few months later, I got curious and searched her name. The university website had her thesis uploaded. I clicked it. There it was again, my words, my stories, my pain, rearranged and labeled as emotional response data. She even added a section analyzing me specifically. The heading said, Case Study, Subject 7. Under it, she'd written, displays consistent patterns of empathy when exposed to perceived emotional distress. Demonstrates a strong need to repair others as a means to avoid self-reflection. That line hit me harder than any insult could, because deep down it was true. After that, I didn't contact her again. I didn't even finish reading the rest. I just closed the tab and walked away from my computer. About a year later, she emailed me one last time. She said she was working on publishing a book based on her research and wanted my permission to quote me again. I never replied. Now, every time I see someone online talk about research or interviews, I scroll right past. I don't trust it anymore. I don't trust that people mean what they say when they call something academic. It's weird, though. Sometimes I'll be scrolling and see a post that reminds me of her writing, her phrasing, her style. And for a second, I'll wonder if it's her. And then I'll remember that somewhere out there's a book or paper with my emotions printed inside it, studied, dissected, graded. Isabella once said she was fascinated by how people reveal themselves when they feel safe. She said that's when the truth comes out. She wasn't wrong. I just wish she told me that I was the one she was testing. Because if I'd known that, I never would have told her who I really was. I met Mason when I wasn't looking for anyone or anything serious. I was just trying to get through my divorce without falling apart. The lawyers were still going back and forth, the house was up for sale, and most nights I'd just sit at the bar near my apartment because I didn't want to go home to silence. That's where I met him. He was sitting a few stools down, drinking whiskey, staring at the muted TV like it had personally offended him. He looked like he'd been through it too. We ended up talking because the bartender messed up our drinks and handed me his glass instead. He laughed and said, guess that means we're sharing now. He was easy to talk to. Not one of those loud guys who needs attention, but calm. Level. He said he was in town for work, some kind of legal stuff, but didn't go into detail. We talked about everything except work, movies, food, dumb things like whether the fries at that bar were better than the place across the street. It felt natural, like the kind of conversation you have with someone you've known longer than a night. After that, we started seeing each other around. The same bar, same nights. Sometimes we'd grab a drink together. He never pushed for anything, just good company. He told me he was divorced too, said it had been a mess. We traded stories about lawyers, property fights, how expensive it was just to end something that was already broken. He made me laugh about it, which was rare back then. Eventually, he said we should hang out outside the bar. He invited me to a poker night at his friend's place. I almost didn't go, but something about him made me want to. The night was fun, simple, nothing shady. He introduced me to everyone like we'd been friends for years. We started talking more after that. Texting, grabbing coffee, even hitting the gym together. I thought he was just a solid guy going through the same crap I was. Someone who got it. One night, after a few drinks, he told me something that stuck. He said, "People always show their real selves when they think no one's watching." I didn't really get what he meant then. I do now. Over time, I started venting to him more. About the divorce, about my ex, about how angry and drained I felt. He was a good listener. Never interrupted, just nodded, maybe asked a question here or there. Sometimes he'd write things down on a small notepad. I thought it was just a habit. He said he liked journaling. A few months went by like that. We became close. Then one day he mentioned he had to go out of town for a few weeks for work. Said he'd be back soon. He left, and I didn't think much of it. While he was gone, my ex-lawyer started coming down harder on me. New questions, specific ones. Stuff that didn't make sense at first. Things I hadn't said to anyone except Mason. Things like how I'd been frustrated and maybe said stuff I shouldn't have. About how the marriage had ended, about some arguments that got heated but never crossed the line. Stuff that could be twisted if someone wanted to. I called my lawyer and asked how my ex's side suddenly knew about all that. She said they'd gotten new personal insights from an outside source. I didn't understand what that meant. Then she said a name, Mason. I swear, I couldn't breathe for a second. I asked her to repeat it. She said he'd submitted statements and context notes about my behavior, supposedly to help support my ex-wife's claim that I wasn't stable enough to handle joint custody. He wasn't a friend. He was her lawyer. He'd been the one handling her side of the divorce the whole time. All those conversations, every drink, every text, every little thing I said in confidence had been part of his job. He'd been gathering information straight from me. I went cold. I remember sitting in my car outside the bar that night, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to replay every moment we talked. Every time he'd steered a conversation just slightly toward my ex. Every time he'd written something in that stupid notepad. I wanted to confront him, but I didn't even know if I could. My lawyer told me to stay quiet, to let her handle it legally. She said it might be considered unethical, but only if I could prove he was actively representing my ex while he was meeting me. Of course, there was no proof. I stopped hearing from him after that. His number went dead. His profiles disappeared. He was just gone. The court dragged on for months after that. My ex's side suddenly had every weakness I'd ever mentioned. They twisted my words, made me sound reckless, unfit. I lost things I didn't even realize I'd been fighting for. When it was finally over, I felt like someone had gutted me. Not because of the settlement, though that was bad, but because I realized I'd handed him everything. Every truth, every emotion, every vulnerable piece of me. And he turned it into evidence. About a year later, I saw him again. Not in person, on TV. Some legal segment about high-profile divorce cases. He was being interviewed, talking about maintaining professionalism during emotionally charged proceedings. He smiled like he'd never done a single thing wrong in his life. I changed the channel. Sometimes I wonder if any of it was real. The laughs, the late-night talks, the sense that maybe I'd made a new friend out of a bad situation. Maybe that's what made him so good at his job. He didn't just lie. He became whoever he needed to be. Now, I don't talk about personal things with anyone new, not even coworkers, not even casual friends. If someone starts asking too many questions, I shut down. I've learned that every friendly smile might come with a hidden reason. The funny part is, if he'd just done his job normally, I probably would have respected him. But pretending to be my friend, pretending to understand my pain, that's what made it feel personal. Sometimes when I'm at that same bar, I catch myself looking at the door, half expecting him to walk in again. I think about what I'd say if he did. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'd just stare at him and let the silence say it all. People talk about betrayal like it's this dramatic thing, loud and messy. But it's not. It's quiet. It's just the sound of trust snapping in half, one word at a time. And every time I hear the name Mason now, I feel it snap all over again. I met Shlo on one of those dating apps that you download, delete, and then download again a week later when you get bored. I wasn't really looking for anyone, just killing time. Her profile popped up with a picture of her sitting in a cafe, holding a cup of coffee and laughing. It wasn't one of those fake influencer smiles either. It looked real. Her bio said, "I'm 28. I love vintage movies, and I'm just trying to find someone who actually texts back." That last line made me laugh, so I sent her a message. She replied pretty quick, said she liked that I didn't use a pickup line. We started talking, and right away she was funny, dry humor, sarcastic, a little chaotic in a good way. She said she was a freelance writer, and I joked that meant she probably never slept. She said she didn't, especially since she was haunted by deadlines and bad men. It was easy talking to her. She made everything feel light. We didn't go deep into personal stuff, just joked around, talked about dumb movies, food, random stuff. She said she just moved back to the city after living somewhere colder. She didn't say where, but it didn't press. Some people like their privacy. After about 2 weeks of talking, we started texting off the app. She'd send me pictures of her food, her cat, the view from her window. She wasn't the selfie every 5 minutes type, which I liked. It felt more natural. She told me she lived alone and worked from home, said it got lonely sometimes. I told her I knew what that felt like. We started having long conversations at night. It was never serious, just random, funny, easy stuff that somehow made the hours disappear. Then one night, she said she wanted to call. I said sure. When she picked up, her voice threw me off. It was deeper than I expected, a little raspy, but nice. She laughed a lot, and it felt familiar, like talking to someone I'd known for years. We talked for 3 hours straight. After that, she called me almost every night. Everything was fine until she started slipping little things into the conversation that didn't make sense. She said stuff like, "It's nice to finally talk to someone younger for a change," or "You remind me of my son when he was your age." I laughed the first few times, thinking she was joking, but then she started saying things that didn't add up. She mentioned songs from the 70s like she'd grown up with them, talked about jobs she'd had decades ago. I finally asked her how old she was, just messing around, and she said, "You already know." I didn't. I said, "You told me you're 28. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Age doesn't really matter when you connect right." That set off alarms in my head. I asked again, this time serious. She sighed and said, "Okay, fine. I'm not 28. I'm 60. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She said she'd lied because she liked talking to me. Said she didn't expect it to go on this long, but she felt a connection. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there staring at the phone, trying to process it. She explained that she'd made the profile using her son's old photos, ones he posted years ago on his social media. She said she wanted to make him jealous because he'd been ignoring her calls and spending all his time online with random girls. I didn't believe her at first. It sounded insane. But then she sent me a photo of herself, the real her. It was an older woman sitting in a living room full of plants, smiling at the camera. She looked nothing like the girl from the app. I didn't even know how to respond. I felt gross, confused, and kind of sad all at once. She said she wasn't trying to mess with me, that she just wanted to see how easy it was for her son to fall for someone fake. I asked where her son was now, and she said he lived in the same city as me. That made it worse. I told her I couldn't talk to her anymore, that it was too weird. She begged me not to block her. She said she just needed someone to talk to. For a while, I ignored her messages, but then she sent one that said, "Please, I don't have anyone else." And I gave in. We talked one last time. She said she deleted the fake profile, said she felt terrible, said her son had found out what she did and wasn't speaking to her anymore. She cried on the phone, and even though I was angry, I couldn't just hang up. I told her to get off dating apps, to go make things right with her son. She said she would. After that, she disappeared for a bit. I figured that was the end of it. Then about a month later, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. It said, "This is Chloe's son." I froze. He said he found my number on his mom's phone after she passed away. Heart attack. He said she talked about me a lot. Said I was kind but distant. I didn't know what to say. He wasn't mad. Just said, "Thank you for being there for her when no one else was." That message hit me harder than I expected. I kept thinking about her sitting alone in that house, pretending to be someone else just to feel noticed. It made me realize how lonely people can get when life stops giving them reasons to reach out. I never replied to her son. I didn't know how to. What do you even say to something like that? "Sorry your mom catfished me, but she seemed nice." No, there wasn't a right thing to say. Sometimes I still think about her, about the way she laughed on those late night calls, or how she said my voice reminded her of her son's. It's weird, but I don't even feel angry anymore. Just sad. Sad that she thought pretending was the only way she could be heard. Now when I scroll through apps, I look at people's profiles differently. I don't assume anything's real. I don't get pulled in by a nice smile or a clever bio, because somewhere out there, someone might be doing what she did, building a fake world because the real one got too quiet. Every time I see a name like Schlo pop up, I swipe left. Not out of anger, just because I don't ever want to be part of something like that again. And sometimes when I'm sitting alone at night with my phone in my hand, I catch myself thinking about her one last message before she disappeared for good. She'd said, "It's nice to feel young again, even just for a little while." Back then, I thought it was manipulative. Now I think it was just honest. She wasn't pretending to hurt me. She was pretending to remember who she used to be. Owen wasn't supposed to matter. He was just another name in a string of random messages I got after I moved into a new place. You know how neighbors get. Everyone wants to introduce you to their cousin or their friend or whoever they think you should meet. That's what happened. My next door neighbor, Kara, told me her cousin was visiting for a few months and might need help finding work. She said he was quiet, good guy, just trying to get back on his feet. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number saying, "Hey, this is Owen, Kara's cousin." He said he was renting a room nearby and wanted to grab a drink sometime to thank me for offering to help. I didn't remember actually offering, but I figured Kara must have mentioned it, so I said sure. We met at a little sports bar down the street. He was taller than I expected, older too, maybe mid-30s. Kind of serious at first, but easy to talk to once he relaxed. He said he'd moved into town to get some space, said things with his girlfriend were rough. I didn't press. Over time, we started hanging out more. We'd grab a beer, talk about work, life, nothing serious. He wasn't one of those loud guys trying to prove something. He'd just listen, ask questions, throw in a joke once in a while. It felt good having a friend around again. He asked about my life too. I told him about my job, my recent breakup, how I was trying to settle into the new house. He said Kara was lucky to have a neighbor who wasn't weird. We laughed about how nosy she was, always peeking through blinds, always knowing when people came and went. Then one night, things started feeling strange. We were sitting outside on my porch, just drinking and talking, when he asked what I thought about Kara. Not in a normal way either. He said, "You ever notice how she flirts with you?" I brushed it off, said she was just friendly. He nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, friendly." After that, he started bringing her up more and more. Said she'd been distant lately, said he thought she might be hiding something. I didn't know what to say. It's not like I knew her that well. I told him to talk to her, but he said he already had, and she just laughed it off. A week later, he texted me saying he wanted to show me something. When I asked what, he said, "You'll see." He came over with a bottle of whiskey and a flash drive. Said he needed my opinion on something. He plugged it into my laptop and opened a folder full of screenshots, texts between Kara and some guy. He said she's been talking to this guy for months, pretending she's single. I didn't want to be involved. I told him it wasn't my business. He said, "You're right, but I just needed someone else to see I'm not crazy." We sat there drinking while he kept showing me more messages. I started feeling uncomfortable, but he looked so calm about it, like he'd already accepted it. He said he was planning to confront her, but he wanted to do it in a way that she couldn't lie her way out of. I told him that sounded dangerous, but he smiled and said, "Don't worry. I just want the truth." 2 nights later, everything exploded. I woke up to banging on my door at 2 in the morning. It was Kara, crying, shaking. She said someone had broken into her car and slashed her tires. She thought it was Owen. I tried to calm her down and said we should call the cops, but she said she didn't have proof. Then she said something that made my head spin. "Owen's not my cousin." I asked what she meant, and she said she didn't know who he really was. Said he'd shown up at her door one night months ago, claiming to be related to her ex-boyfriend. He'd said he needed a place to crash, so she let him stay in the guest room for a bit. Then things got weird. He'd start asking questions, checking her phone, accusing her of lying. Eventually, she kicked him out, but he kept showing up. I didn't even know what to say. I told her I'd help her call the police in the morning. She stayed on my couch that night, too scared to go back home. The next day, I tried calling Owen, but his number was disconnected. I walked by the house he'd said he was renting, but it looked empty. No car, no lights, nothing. He was just gone. A few days later, I started noticing strange things around my place. My porch light would flicker even when the bulb was fine. A chair on my back deck would be moved slightly. My trash cans were pushed closer to the fence. I told myself I was imagining it. Then one night I heard something, a quiet tapping on my window. I froze. When I looked, I saw a shadow outside, tall, still, watching. By the time I grabbed a flashlight, it was gone. I called the cops, but there wasn't much they could do. They took a report and said they'd patrol the area. A week later, Kara moved out. She said she couldn't stay there anymore, that she needed to feel safe. I didn't blame her. After she left, things calmed down for a while. I started sleeping again, started thinking maybe I'd imagined the worst of it. Then one night, I got an email. No name, no subject line. Just one sentence. Thanks for the drinks. She was cheating after all. There was no way to trace it. I called the police again, showed them the message, but they said unless there was a direct threat, there wasn't much to do. I stopped going out after that. I installed cameras around the house. For months, nothing happened. But every now and then, I'd see a shape in the footage. Someone walking past the driveway late at night, head down slow, always alone. Eventually, I sold the place and moved. I still think about him sometimes, Owen, or whatever his real name was. The calm way he talked, the way he looked at me like he already knew I'd get pulled into it. I keep wondering if he really believed Kara was cheating, or if that was just the excuse he gave himself to keep watching her. Maybe he just liked being close enough to her to feel in control. Sometimes late at night, I still get random messages from unknown numbers. Nothing threatening, just weird things like, new neighborhood suits you, or hope the lights are brighter there. I block him, of course, but it doesn't stop the feeling that he's still out there somewhere, still watching, still convinced he was right. People always say trust your gut, but the thing is, your gut doesn't help when someone's already pretending to be something else. You can't trust instincts when the whole situation's built on lies. And the worst part, I still don't know what part of what he told me was real. Maybe none of it. Maybe all of it. But either way, I'll never let anyone new get that close again. Because now I know, sometimes the danger doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who pretend they belong. If I'm being honest, I didn't even want to help her at first. I'd been burned before by people pretending to do good things for bad reasons. So when Ella messaged me about a charity project, I figured it was another one of those help us raise awareness scams. But she was different. Her first message said, I'm working on something small but meaningful. I heard you done community work before. That was true. I'd volunteered a few times after my divorce, mostly helping with food drives and stuff for local shelters. She said she was putting together a project to help single parents who'd lost custody of their kids rebuild their lives. The way she worded it hit me hard. I told her I could donate or spread the word, but she said she wanted my help directly. Said she needed someone who'd been through the system, who could share what it was really like. We started talking on and off after that. She said she was a teacher, worked at a local elementary school, and wanted to teach her students about empathy by organizing small projects that helped families. She said she was tired of talking about kindness without actually doing it. She had this calm, careful way of writing, like every word was chosen on purpose. I liked that. I told her I could help write something about my experience, about how it felt losing time with my daughter and what I'd learned from it. She said that would be perfect, and she'd make sure it made a difference. Over the next few weeks, we started talking more personally. She'd ask how my daughter was, if I got to see her often. I said not as much as I'd like to. She said she could tell I still cared, that most dads didn't talk about their kids that way. It felt good hearing that. She sent pictures sometimes, nothing weird, just of her classroom, the art projects her students made, or the bulletin board she decorated. She looked young, maybe late 20s, and she had this gentle smile that made her look like the kind of person who was always patient. After a few months, she said the charity project was officially starting and asked if I wanted to meet to go over details. We met at a cafe downtown on a Sunday morning. She was exactly like her pictures, soft-spoken, polite, always looking like she was thinking before she spoke. We talked for about an hour about the project, but honestly, most of it was small talk. She asked a lot about my daughter again, what my custody situation was like, how things with my ex were now. I didn't think anything of it. I figured she just wanted to understand what I'd gone through. Before we left, she said she'd like to do a few follow-up interviews, maybe record them for a podcast she wanted to start about family resilience. I said sure. She said she'd contact me soon. A week later, she texted and asked if she could come by my place to record. I told her I didn't really like having people over, so we agreed to meet at a park instead. She showed up with a microphone, notebook, and this calm, professional energy that made me forget how weird it felt to be recorded. She asked deep questions, stuff no one else ever asked. Things like, what do you wish your daughter understood about you? And what's the hardest part about being seen as the bad guy? I opened up. I talked more in those 2 hours than I had in years. She listened without interrupting, just nodded now and then. When it was done, she thanked me and said it was one of the most honest stories she'd ever heard. I didn't hear from her again for a while after that. She didn't reply to messages or calls. I figured maybe she got busy. But then one night, I got an email from my lawyer. It said, "You need to see this." Attached was a document, a transcript, my transcript. Word for word, everything I'd said in that interview with Ella. It was part of a report filed in my custody case. I couldn't believe it. I called my lawyer immediately and asked where it came from. She said the school had sent it. Apparently, my daughter's teacher had submitted it as evidence to show I might be emotionally unstable. My heart dropped. I asked for the teacher's name. It was Ella. Turns out she wasn't just a teacher. She was my daughter's teacher. All those months of messages, the fake project, the interviews, it was all her. She'd been gathering information, pretending to care, pretending to listen. She'd said she wanted to help single parents, but really she was working with my ex-wife's lawyer. She'd been documenting everything I said to use in the custody fight. I felt sick. I went back through every message, every little thing she'd said. It all made sense now. The questions about my ex, my parenting, my daughter, she'd been leading me the whole time. I tried confronting her, emailed her, called the school, even showed up there once. But she wouldn't see me. They said I needed to leave, that she filed a complaint saying I was harassing her. She won in the end. My ex got full custody. The court said I lacked emotional stability, citing direct quotes from those interviews. After that, I stopped fighting. I didn't have it in me anymore. A few months later, my daughter told me her teacher had moved away, transferred to another district. She didn't even know I knew her. For a long time, I blamed myself for falling for it. I thought about all the red flags I ignored, the way she always asked specific questions, the way she knew details I had never mentioned publicly. But what really gets me is how convincing she was. How she made it seem like she genuinely wanted to help. Now, whenever someone talks about charity work or projects that make a difference, I shut down. I can't even fill out volunteer forms anymore. I don't trust anyone who wants to record my story. Sometimes, though, when I drive past that old school, I catch myself wondering if she ever felt bad, if she ever thought about what she did to me or to my daughter. I doubt it. People like her convince themselves they're doing the right thing, even when they're tearing someone apart. Now my daughter's older. We've started talking again slowly. She doesn't remember much from that time, and I don't tell her. She doesn't need to know that her teacher, the one she always said was so kind, was the reason her dad disappeared from her life for a while. I keep that part to myself. Sometimes I think about that first message she sent me, the one that said, "I'm working on something meaningful." She wasn't lying. It just meant something completely different to her than it did to me. Jack messaged me on a Tuesday morning, right when I was about to delete my LinkedIn account. I'd been out of work for a few months, burnt out, tired of fake job posts, and great opportunities that turned out to be scams. So when I got a message from someone claiming to be a recruiter offering a dream job, I almost ignored it. His message said, "Hey, I came across your profile and think you'd be perfect for a senior management role at a new logistics firm expanding to our city." I almost laughed. That's the kind of line you see in spam emails. But something about the tone was different. It wasn't robotic or pushy. He mentioned specifics about my last job, my skill set, even the kind of work I'd done 10 years earlier, so I answered. He said his name was Jack, that he worked for a staffing agency called Northline Resources. He gave me the company website, which looked real enough. He said the job paid $120,000 a year, came with full benefits, and needed someone experienced but grounded. That phrase hooked me. Experienced but grounded. It sounded like something a real recruiter would say, not a scammer. We started emailing back and forth. He asked normal interview-style questions, stuff about management style, problem solving, career goals. It all felt legit. He even called me one afternoon for a phone screening. His voice was calm, confident, professional. I remember thinking, finally something good might actually happen. Over the next few days, we talked a lot. He said the company was new in the region, that they were building a team from scratch. He said I'd be working directly under the operations director and that he'd personally recommend me. Then came the twist. He said the director wanted to meet me informally before moving forward. It's not an interview, he said, just a coffee meeting to see if the personalities match. That sounded fine. He said he'd set it up at a cafe downtown. The morning of the meeting, I got there early. I ordered coffee, checked my messages, waited. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Nobody showed up. I texted Jack, asked if the meeting was still on. No reply. After another half hour, I left. I didn't think much of it at first. Recruiters flake sometimes. When I checked my email later that day, I noticed something weird. The email thread with Jack was gone. Completely gone. Deleted. I checked the spam folder, the trash. Nothing. I searched the company website again, and it was gone too. Just a 404 error page. My stomach dropped. I figured maybe I had fallen for some kind of scam, but there hadn't been anything to scam me out of. No money, no personal info, nothing. Just time and hope. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the way he talked had felt so real. Too real. A few days later, I got another message. This time from an old classmate I hadn't talked to since high school. He said, "Hey, weird question, but did you get an email from someone named Jack recently?" I froze. I said yeah, asked how he knew. He said he got the same thing. A recruiter, a job offer, all the same details. That's when I knew something was seriously off. We started comparing notes. Same company name, same operations director, same fake meeting. Only difference was, Jack had used slightly different job titles. Then my classmate said something that made me stop cold. He said, "Do you remember a guy named Jack Heller from school?" I did. He was this quiet kid who sat behind me in history class. I'd bullied him. Not in some big dramatic way, but enough to make me feel like crap looking back. Little things. Mocking him for his stutter, stealing his lunch once, calling him names. I hadn't thought about him in 20 years. My classmate said he read online that Jack had started a tech firm years ago, but it went under. Apparently, he disappeared after that. No social media, no contact with anyone from school. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing his name over and over in my head. The next day, I got an email from a new address. The subject line said, "Did I waste your time?" I didn't even want to open it, but I did. It was him. He said, "You probably don't remember me, but I remember everything you said. I thought about what it'd be like to make you feel small again, like you weren't good enough. I wanted to see how desperate you'd gotten." My hands went numb. He said he created fake profiles, fake websites, even fake company listings just to lure me in. Said he watched my online activity for months, knew when I was unemployed, knew what jobs I was applying for. He said, "You treated me like a joke back then. Now, I just wanted to see if you'd jump when I dangled something you couldn't have." He ended it with, "I guess you did." I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like hours. The worst part was, I couldn't even say he was wrong. I had jumped. I believed every word. I'd fallen for it completely. I thought about replying, but what could I even say? "Sorry for making your life hell 20 years ago. Congrats on the long game." I deleted the email, but didn't stop there. For the next few weeks, I'd get random reminders, emails from fake accounts, all with the same line, "Still waiting for that coffee meeting." I stopped answering anything that looked unfamiliar. A few months later, I got a real job offer, a legit one. But I almost didn't take it because I couldn't shake the feeling that Jack was behind it somehow, that he'd find a way to embarrass me again. It's been years now. I haven't heard from him since, but I still think about him sometimes. About how much effort he put into something so petty and how much it worked. I can't even be mad at him, not really. I get it. If someone had treated me like I treated him back then, I'd probably want revenge too. Still, it's a messed up feeling realizing someone spent all that time studying you just to get one clean hit. Every once in a while, I check my spam folder and see an email from a new recruiter. Same format, same kind of wording. I delete them instantly. Maybe it's him, maybe it's not. Doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I learned something I wish I'd learned back in high school. Some people never forget what you did to them. They just wait until you're too tired to see it coming. So now, whenever someone offers me something that sounds too good to be true, I remember that empty cafe, that silent phone, that fake smile I never saw. And I remind myself that not every ghost is gone. Some just change their name and wait for you to reply.